Alright, so today we have some pretty good news regarding PlayStation that I wanted to bring to you guys. It seems that Sony is coming out here and talking about their strategy when it comes to their approach with the PlayStation 5, and I think it's something that a lot of you guys are certainly going to be interested in. I know I was, and it's honestly exciting news to bring to you guys. It's not anything that's really mind-blowing, but it's just one of these things where it's really great to hear once again Sony letting us know what to expect. Because it's pretty much going to be music to our ears. And in regards to their PlayStation 5 strategy, it seems that Sony is aiming to please hardcore gamers and put an even bigger focus on big exclusive games and partnering with big publishers. So it says here that with the PlayStation 5, or whatever it ends up being called, supposedly launching late next year, Sony will be in the process of defining its approach to the next console generation. A detailed Wall Street Journal report gives some insight into how this approach is taking shape, and it sounds like Sony wants a clear focus on hardcore dedicated gamers. At a recent company meeting, Sony CEO Kenichiro Yoshida apparently called the PS5 a niche product, with the device being primed, at least initially, for the hardcore gaming market. It's clear that Sony wants to lock down the audience as quickly as possible, and to do that, the Japanese giant will place an emphasis on continuing to build relationships with the industry's biggest publishers while also producing high-quality PlayStation exclusive games. Much like the PS4, the PS5 is set to be a key part of Sony's business. As much, Sony will continue to view Microsoft as its main competitor in the console space, with the next Xbox, dubbed Project Scarlet right now, also set to release near the end of 2020. Sony is also aware of the threat that newcomers like Google Stadia potentially pose, but only views them as such in the mid to long term. In other words, Sony doesn't seem to think that the world is quite ready for streaming to take over just yet. As for Sony looking to work closely with bigger publishers, a spokesperson said that while Sony will still welcome smaller independent studios with the PlayStation 5, the company believes that the big budget titles are the games that people buy consoles for, and as such, that's where Sony will concentrate its efforts. This line of thinking also applies to Sony's own exclusive projects, which will also be the focal point on PS5. On paper, the strategy certainly makes sense. PlayStation is the current market leader by some distance, and it's achieved its lead by having a clear focus on games, exclusives, or otherwise. There's no doubt that Sony will be looking to recreate the impressive success of the PS4 with the PS5, so you can probably expect a lot of similarities when it comes to the company's overall strategy. So I know that was a lot of reading and a lot to take in a short period of time, but essentially what Sony is coming out here and saying is, look, we really want to capture as quickly as we can the hardcore gaming audience that is here right now currently supporting the PlayStation 4, that has been supporting the PS4 throughout this entire generation. We want to bring them over to the PS5, and what's even better is they're out here saying that we know the best way to do that is to entice them with big, exciting, exclusive AAA games and partnering with big AAA games. This is something that I honestly think when you look at PlayStation, when you look at Xbox, this is the separating factor. There's a lot of things that we talk about on both sides of the coin, but what it really comes down to is Sony is the one out here saying what the hardcore gamers, the people who are out there supporting these big games, supporting the games that are AAA, that take a lot of time to make, that are bigger budget, and that are also out there supporting the console and buying the console. You know, Sony's the one out here speaking to us and giving us what we want at the same time. They're not just talk either. That's the most important point I have to kind of bring home here, that I think most of us already know at this point in time. And so you look at Microsoft, and they're just not doing it. If you look at a lot of the complaints that a lot of Xbox fans have had and still have over the past couple of years, is that it just seems like Microsoft's kind of doing their own thing anymore, and they're not really speaking to that hardcore audience, and therefore they're losing that audience to Sony. And Sony's well aware that they pretty much have them wrapped up right now, and they want to not take advantage of that, and they want to ensure that going into next generation, going into the PlayStation 5, they're going to do everything they possibly can to make sure that they bring them over and they don't lose them and they gain more. And it's nice to hear that they're, at first maybe, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit when the Sony CEO called console gaming niche. But, the truth is, when we look at it in a broad spectrum, you know what I mean, speaking about the entire world, and you think about how many people actually make up the console gaming market, in a sense, yes, okay, I could see why it's viewed as niche. but at the same time, like, it's very important to Sony, and that's all that matters to me. You know, the CEO of Sony can call us whatever he wants as long as he's out here saying that, hey, we appreciate the console gamers, we appreciate the hardcore gamers, and we're going to aim to please you guys. Like, that's pretty much all that matters to me, and they've been doing that, and that's why I'm honestly as excited as I am going into next generation. It's because we know that Sony is out here putting us at the forefront, knowing that, you know, it's really going to be a matter of showing the games, showing a powerful, you know, new console that can do a lot of things that the PS4 and the PS4 Pro simply can't do. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be the games. And so anytime I hear Sony putting an emphasis on that gets me genuinely excited, because that's what matters at the end of the day. On top of that, it seems that Sony is going to be looking to lock down more timed exclusives for PS5. Now, depending on where you stand with this, you might see that as a good or a bad thing, but here's something we need to pay attention to. Regardless of whether you think it's a good or a bad thing, it's been an effective strategy for Sony. So it says here that according to an insightful Wall Street Journal report, Sony is looking to make deals with major publishers in order to put the PlayStation 5 in the best possible position when it launches next year. The publication claims that the platform holder is focusing on major, big-budget titles, and it's lining up both timed exclusivity and exclusive content to differentiate itself. This will likely end up an extension of its PS4 strategy, where it's partnered closely with major releases like Destiny and Watch Dogs to give it the upper hand. If anything, its bargaining power is likely to have strengthened since the launch of the current gen console, so don't be surprised if it spotlights somewhat whopping third-party titles when the PS5 is finally revealed to the world. All this, according to the Wall Street Journal, is coming at the expense of smaller indie studios, but the Japanese giant will no doubt be remembering the Indie Station 4 reputation it earned at the beginning of this generation. Look at the reaction to Sony's earlier E3 press conferences and even the recent State of Play. It's pretty obvious what fans want, and the company looks poised to deliver. So that's an important point to bring up here too, is that a lot of people are maybe concerned that by Sony doing this, they're kind of pushing the indies away. I don't think that's true. I think what people need to understand is that what the gamers who support consoles really want to see are the bigger titles. There's just no way around that. That's not a dig at the smaller titles, because we appreciate them just as much. But the truth is, when we hear Sony talking about the next gen console, when we hear them announcing they're going to have a State of Play, or whenever they're going to have another big show, we're excited to see the big games. You know, having a few indies sprinkled here and there is just pretty much the icing on top. You know what I'm saying? And so it's really nice to see that and hear that Sony understands that, and they're going to put that as a priority, because frankly, that's what I want. You know, and I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but when I see the big AAA titles, the new titles, whether they're first party or third party, especially the first party stuff though, it gets me excited. You know, and I get excited for indies as well, and I have a great appreciation for indies, but when we tune into these big events or even the smaller events, we just have to be honest with ourselves. We're looking for the big stuff, you know what I'm saying? And that's just the way it is. The smaller stuff is fine, but it's best that we see that not really at the reveal of the PS5. Maybe, you know, kind of have its own little separate thing, or they could just do it on their, you know, the PlayStation YouTube channel, whatever it may be, you know what I'm saying? So I know I sounded like really hyped up in this video, but it's simply because there's just a lot of information to convey here, and it's a lot to take in at one time, and it's exciting. Like, it's exciting. I can't hide that. I can't hide the fact that when I hear Sony talking about their strategy getting ready for the PlayStation 5, they're hitting every single beat that I want to hear. They care about the hardware. They want it to be powerful. This is something that has become pretty clear over the past couple of months. They care about the hardcore gamer. They care about the fact that the hardcore gamer wants the big AAA titles. They understand that exclusive content matters. It is important. And, you know, maybe that the timed exclusivity deals aren't nearly as important, but they do help. And the point is, Sony understands that they need to do things to differentiate themselves, to separate themselves, to offer something on their platform that you simply can't get anywhere else. And because of that, it's going to make them stand out. It's going to make them unique. It's going to make them probably, most likely, the leader once again. And this is all stuff, once again, that Microsoft simply isn't doing. It almost seems like Microsoft is taking the opposite approach, when it comes to this stuff. And, you know, this is where the market ultimately ends up deciding. And if you're basing, you know, what the market wants off of statistics show that people are going to PlayStation because PlayStation is offering things that the competition simply isn't. And that's just the way it is. It seems that that's the way it's going to continue to be. And honestly, I couldn't be more excited for it. I'm very, very excited to see what the PlayStation 5 ends up being, and this approach and the strategy that Sony has here, how they're going to implement it, what it means for the big titles, knowing that they're going to go in even harder on the big, you know, PlayStation exclusives, as well as partnering, you know, with third parties. It all sounds extremely exciting, and it sounds like it's going to be an amazing time to be a PlayStation gamer. I mean, it has been all throughout all this generation, that much is clear, but knowing that that's going to potentially continue and maybe even become even better going into next generation. I don't mean to sound like a fanboy, because I know there's some people who call me that, but how is this not exciting to people? You know, to people who care about console gaming, to people who care about the big exclusive titles that Sony has delivered this generation. It's extremely exciting, and it's extremely compelling, and something tells me that most people are going to be really happy to hear that this is going to be Sony's strategy. Of course, they did mention cloud gaming and they did mention Google Stadia, but it's just good to know that that's not really their priority. They understand that they need to be prepared for whatever the future may offer, because they don't know what the future is, but they are certainly far from abandoning what has worked for them up until this point. They're just trying to cover all their bases and make sure that they don't get blindsided. That's just called being smart. That's called, you know, doing good business. So, yeah, that does it for the video, guys. Be sure to let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. What do you think about Sony's comments and their overall strategy going into the PS5? Be sure to leave the video a like if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.